he's a funny dude, man. Funny dude, been doing it for a long time, been at it, been in the in the trenches, just like all of us. And he's definitely, I mean, if not more. And yeah, he was actually in London for a little bit. Actually, he was there. He did like Top Secret. I think he did like a couple nights there. Yeah,
No, he's brilliant, isn't he? He's really something this summer.
that dude funny. That dude funny.
Is From when we were talking before the podcast, you said like better has five different meanings. Could you explain what they are to
Mhm.
people, to the people that are listening in? But also talk about
Mhm.
who are some comics in Germany or Berlin that you think could probably hack it in New York if they went over, considering it's such a saturated
Uh,
city.
well, yeah, I mean, because also, when you out in Europe, some of the references, I get. Well, let me answer the first one. The first one in terms of like, what is the five? What could be, what could be the five possibilities of what's successful or what's like? I guess you said successful, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the top five, I guess, angles of what a successful comedian is, or what's like, a top comedian in general. I think the first one is just popularity. I think just, everyone's talking about this person, so that can be success in a lot of people's eyes, actually. So that, and maybe this goes into two or three. Popular in general. Second, huge social media following. I mean, everyone. I mean, at this point, every comedian, every entertainer at this point is really sensitive to their following count and like their social media. So, if your social media is very big and huge, like literally people are making a lot of assumptions in terms of like where you stand in comedy. Like, oh, this person has 600,000 followers. He must be, or she must be X, Y, and Z. 600,000 followers. You must be past that. So people even have references to where they're at comically based on their following count or their reach on social media. And we all do it, right? Like, I mean, anyone who has it, like, say, if you saw a comedian has 1 million followers, you're going to make the assumption that they sell out theaters or they sell out uh, at least venues. And if they don't, you're going to be like, whoa, what? I mean, but you have 1 million followers. Why don't you? Blah, 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 right? So you have that. Number three is in terms of like what clubs you're passed into. So, like, for example, if you're passed at a Comedy Cellar, I mean, that, and which is very valid, that if you're passed there, it means you're a very good comedian. That's because it's so hard to get in. Like, you have to get vouched, you have to go through a second interview process in terms of you doing a lot of gigs to see like how much stuff you have, how many bits, what your like how you handle certain like situations. Also, too, there's other clubs in which it's just hard to get in. So if you do get in, it kind of adds like this little thing of like, hey, if I, only these type of comedians can get it. So if you're not in, or if you are in, you must be successful, right? Number four is successful is actually you just being funny as hell. Like, you actually is just under, like, everyone named mom, like when you bring up their name, it's like they're funny, right? Like, there's no like, ah! Like the minute is like a hesitation, then it's like, well, I mean, they may be, I don't know, they ain't like successfully funny, like in a way where it's like undeniable. If you bring up like Donnell Rawlings, very funny. If you bring up, um, who else? Dion Cole, very, like, funny. If you bring up Greer Barnes, funny. Even some people that may not be known, like Dave Lester, very funny. Kareem Green, very funny. Um, you got some other dudes out there in Harlem. So like you have that type of success. And then number five is that success. I mean, and this one's kind of maybe woo wowie or something. I don't know, not woo wowie, but kind of like more artist like. Is that success for you, like in terms of what you want to do, right? Like, and I think that one's hard to gauge, right? Because again, we like to place a lot of these arbitrary things on what success is, especially as a comedian or artist, right? Like, especially those four things I mentioned. But you yourself, because you got some people that are successful in one of those domains, but they're not happy. Like, we've seen some people who maybe have like a huge Netflix special, or like had a huge budget, or has a lot of following, but you can still see like some not sadness, but you can still see some non-contentment with where they are based on the actions they're doing. They're like, oh, well, I want it this way. Well, I don't like it this way. And it's kind of like, well, you have $1 million. So that's success in one of these top five things, but you still want more, or you're still not satisfied. So I think number five is probably like the most important, in which you yourself feel successful. Like that's important. That's actually very important.
And who are comedians from Berlin or New York that you've gigged with and that you would
Mhm.
say fulfill all those things?
That fill all those things. I don't know how to fill all. I mean, um, well, number I guess aside from number five, let me just say in terms of like just funny or maybe like to New York or something like just to go out to New York. There's one dude. His name is Tyrone Stallone, and he's a dude. He's actually from the states. He's actually from LA, and then he been living in Berlin for a while. And like that guy has just lived a life. You know what I mean? So like he has so many stories and things in which that somebody from New York would listen to that and be like, "Wow, that's crazy!" Like, oh my god, you know what I mean? Like that, that's funny or that's wild because you know he lived a life. He lived in America, he lived in South Africa, he lived in different parts of Africa. He traveled all over, and also one thing I like about him is that he still has a he's still like he you know sometimes people they live away from their hometown for a long time and it kind of shows, you know. With him, it's like anytime I talk with him, it reminds me of like comedy back in the States. Like because we be making jokes, we roasting each other, we say X, Y, Z. Sometimes he be, sometimes be fucking with you, like, and then you gotta have to like, kind of push back. Like, it's like that type of like banter back and forth where you're like, oh, all right, like, you know what I mean? This is I like this type of banter back. It reminds me of like the way I used to like communicate with my comedian friends back in New York. Like we used to make jokes about each other, make fun of each other, X, Y, and Z. We doing some, crazy jokes, all this shit, trolling each other, like all these things that somebody might be like, whoa, what? But like in comedy world, it's like, yeah, you only do this with like your people you hang out with all the time.
Hmm.